Hey, thanks for joining in today. You know, occasionally I teach a long-range precision rifle shooting class, and one of the questions that I hear very frequently is, what is the maximum range for my rifle, or maximum range for this rifle? Well, you know, there are several ways to determine maximum range. For instance, if we just simply take a box of 22 long rifle, we open it up, we notice that the range stated here is 1.5 miles. And that is because we could take at a rifle and aim it at about 45 degrees, and that projectile, that little 40-grain lead bullet, will fly about 1.5 miles before it impacts the earth. Now that simply tells us how far the bullet will fly. But normally we're interested in something more than just that. We might be interested in learning how far can I shoot this rifle and expect a hit on the target. And there's a couple of ways to determine this as well. And the first way is the supersonic/transonic velocity for that given rifle. Now, while there are a number of very accomplished shooters that can accurately shoot through the transonic zone, most of us mere mortals can't do that, myself included. So I look at the point at which my rifle, or this particular round that I'm shooting, hits the transonic zone. Now, supersonic velocities at this elevation are at 1,100 feet per second. And the transonic zone is plus or minus 20% of that value. So for me, shooting at this elevation, my transonic zone starts at about 1,320 feet per second and runs all the way through 880 feet per second. After that time, my bullet's going to settle down again, and it's going to be pretty easy to figure out where it's going. The problem is everything that happens with that bullet during its flight through the transonic zone. And what's happening there is effectively an awful lot of turbulence as the velocity of air passing above the bullet is different than the velocities below the bullet. And therefore we see turbulence in that bullet, and it kind of starts going all different sorts of directions. So for me, 1,300 feet per second is the maximum range for my long-range shooting when I'm punching paper. Another way of looking at this is to look at the precision of your individual rifle. So let's say that I know my rifle can shoot 1.5 MOA. I can do that, let's say, all day long, inside and out, 1.5 MOA. Well, now we have to understand or think about what is the size of my target. Let's say that my target is 18 inches in size. Knowing those two pieces of information, the precision in MOA and the size of that target, we can calculate the maximum range for that particular rifle. Now we need to understand what MOA is, by the way. So let's say I put a target out downrange, and this is my point of aim, right there, dead at the bullseye. MOA is an angular measurement, minute of angle. So whenever we hear the word minute, most of us immediately think about time. And that's not too bad of an analogy because it tells us that we're dealing with the value 60. There are 60 minutes in an hour. Likewise, there are 60 minutes in a degree. And as we also know, there are 360 degrees in a full circle. So let's say that my bullseye is perfectly flat, 0 degrees inclination from my position all the way out to that bullseye. Well, if I wanted to shoot as far as possible, I would want to raise that bore, that muzzle, at a 45-degree angle. So this then is the angle that we're concerned with when we talk about minute of angle. Now there's that 45-degree angle again. Well, you know, that's really quite an inclination to put onto a rifle. However, if we visualize this, it can help us to understand MOA, or minute of angle. Here we see each degree in a 45-degree angle illustrated. And we can see that a single degree is actually quite small. We can measure each degree, each individual degree that is, even more precisely by dividing it into a smaller part. And that smaller part is called a minute, or it's measured in minutes. Visualize then, if you can, fitting 60 minutes or graduations inside each of these degrees. What is even more interesting is the fact that even at 1,200 yards, the bullet drop for my .308 Winchester is only 40 minutes of angle. In other words, it's only 40 of those 60 minutes required in 1 degree. It's about then 2/3 of a degree inclination. Now the way I've just described MOA, it might seem like it's only used to measure the angle above the axis of the bore. Well, that's not 100% correct either. Recall, MOA is an angular measurement, and we can use MOA to measure the angle above or below the point of aim, as well as to the left and to the right, in fact, all directions. So then, when we measure the shot dispersion of a 3-shot group or a 5-shot group or whatever it happens to be, it's even better then to visualize MOA as a cone, like we're showing right here. Now, we're not purposely or intentionally raising or lowering the barrel to purposely cause some dispersion in the point of impact of our bullets, but rather because of a lot of different factors, the quality of the ammo, the quality of the barrel, the harmonics, etc., etc., etc. Those rounds will be dispersing around my point of aim. And we can measure that dispersion using minute of angle. In shorthand, we can think of a minute of angle as being 1 inch at 100 yards, but that's not really correct. And it doesn't matter that much at 100 yards, but once we start stretching out to the effective range of a rifle, you know, 5, 6, 7, 800, 900, 1,000 yards and potentially beyond, then the actual MOA becomes really, really critical to know and to understand. It is equal to, 1 MOA is equal to 1.047 of an inch at 100 yards. Now if we go back to our example, we have a target that is 18 inches in size. If we do just a little bit of calculation, we can determine then that a 1.5 MOA rifle's effective range for that size target is 1,147 yards. But what if our target is not a thin piece of paper? In this case, we need to be looking at more than just how far that bullet can fly. Now we need to start looking at the energy, velocity, and the quality of that bullet that we're shooting to ensure that we get a good, clean kill on that game animal. Now it stands to reason that larger animals are going to require more energy to kill cleanly, and oftentimes a better constructed bullet. But we're going to run with a little example using the old rule of thumb that you need about 1,000 foot-pounds of energy to cleanly kill a white-tailed deer, maybe a mule deer, at whatever range that bullet is going to hit it. So knowing the mass and the velocity of our bullet at the range that it's going to hit the target, we can then calculate the energy of that bullet. And then we can also determine the threshold at which that bullet falls below our 1,000 foot per second rule of thumb. So let's say now that I'm shooting my .243 Winchester with a 95 grain bullet at white-tailed deer. By running some calculations and looking at my ballistic tables, I learned very quickly that the maximum lethal range of that bullet is only 425 yards. Now, of course, someone could argue that it's easy to kill a deer or an antelope at well beyond that distance. I've done it myself. I've known other people to do it. Yes, yes, yes. That's just fine. But we need to start somewhere when we try to understand the lethality or maximum lethal range of these bullets. And what's even more important is to look at all these different ways to slice and dice my effective range and really look for the smallest or shortest range. And bear that in mind when you're out shooting targets, if that's the case, hunting, whatever it happens to be. Hey, thanks once again for watching. And if you've got some questions, comments, some discussion points, put those in the comments below. We'd like to hear from you. Take care.